We are here because Mr. Beck wants respondents' website shut down, and he wants it shut down because the website makes a poignant and accurate satirical critique of Mr. Beck by parroting his very rhetorical style. Beck's skin is too thin to take the criticism, so he wants the site down. Now, that's pretty blunt language for a legal brief. I've read
Did I write
thousands of legal... You wrote that. And I've read thousands of legal briefs. Rarely are they that funny, and rarely are they that bold. I was impressed that for that amount.
I've sort of not really practiced law the way a lot of people do. I find that, first off, I found when I went to law school that there seemed to be this requirement that in order to go to law school, you have to have, a stick up your butt. And then law school finds the people that don't have that and puts one there, and then finds everybody and tries to pound it up there even further. It's completely unnecessary. We are part of the reason I think that people don't identify with lawyers or like lawyers is that we collectively try to act like we're so different from everybody else. We're not. My job is to take my client's story, tell that story to the person who has to make the decision in a way that'll make them understand. And you're not going to find people trying to really employ that kind of rhetorical style normally. But I thought it was most appropriate here because the joke itself is not that easy to get. And it's one in a string of many internet jokes, otherwise known as internet memes. And I really feel like if you're going to understand the case, you've got to be in on the joke. And you can't be in on the joke unless you come down to my client's level a little bit.
Well, you immediately became my favorite lawyer when I read that. And you moved up even a notch more with your second response to this lawsuit. This is pure genius, I think. The second response to his complaint, you asked him to stipulate something in the case. Explain to my listeners what you did.
Well, under the UDRP, this international procedure that we're using in this dispute, the arbitrators are not bound by any one nation's laws. They could be drawn from any country. They can apply almost any legal principle they want, although there is sort of a conglomeration of where all of our international legal principles come together, and that's something you can count on there. But when it comes to domain names that are used to criticize other people, there's a split. And that's because we in the United States, we've fought really hard for our First Amendment rights, and American arbitrators are not going to let that get eroded at WIPO. They find that if the domain name is used to criticize something or somebody in a manner that would be permissible under U.S. law, they're not going to award the domain name to the complainant. Under View 1, which is usually adopted by European panelists that have a little more restrictive view of free speech and a more expansive view of defamation, that's not enough. So in cases like that, for example, the real divide is on sucks cases. So when you have the name of a company and then it says that it's sucks.com, European arbitrators tend to give those to the complainant and Americans tend to not to. So what I did is I simply asked Mr. Beck to, through his lawyers, to stipulate that the First Amendment should apply to these proceedings. I thought that as a patriotic American, going to WIPO with another patriotic American, we'd all want the First Amendment to apply. And this is especially the case given Mr. Beck's public statements. He has publicly stated that Dean Harold Coe of Yale Law School was a threat to American democracy because he wanted to, quote, subordinate the American Constitution to foreign and international rules. And Mr. Beck also said, once we sign our rights over to international law, the Constitution is officially dead. Therefore, I naively presumed that he would also want to stipulate that the First Amendment should apply to these proceedings, so I politely asked him to do that.
Yeah, well, it's written, this is a little bit more polite than the previous one, and I'm going to quote you here. I hate to presume anything about anyone, but I presume that Mr. Beck will agree to this stipulation. It would be an interesting day indeed if Mr. Beck preferred to risk that a panelist would apply, say, French law to a case between two Americans over a matter of public discourse. I am certain that neither party wishes to see the First Amendment rights subordinated to international trademark principles, thus unwittingly proving Mr. Beck's point. Lest this case become an example of international law causing damage to the constitutional rights that both of our clients hold dear, I respectfully request that your client agree to stipulate to the application of American constitutional law to this case. Now, this is pure genius, as far as I'm concerned, because this is hoisting him on his own petard, as the old saying goes.
Oh, I hadn't considered it that way.
And sort of painting him into a corner out of which he has now. Has there been any reply to that motion?
Not that has been received by me, no.
Okay, but it's really got him in a bind, doesn't it?
Well,
at least rhetorically,
Perhaps, yes. I don't really want to put words in his mouth, but if he stands for what he says he stands for publicly, I presume that I will eventually hear from him that he would like the First Amendment to apply to these proceedings.
Well, the good thing is we don't have to put words in his mouth because he's put those words out of his mouth. Here he is criticizing liberals. He said, let me tell you something about liberals. When you can't win with the people, you bump it up to the courts. And when you can't win with the courts, you bump it up to the international level.
Yes, the irony meter is running.
My irony meter was destroyed. And I need to get a stronger one because this seems to happen quite a bit. Now, you mentioned earlier this notion of internet memes. And in one of the appendices to this, you go to a lot of trouble to explain to this panel the idea of internet memes, and you provide a list of some of the biggest ones, from LOL cats to all your base are belong to us, which anybody sort of familiar with this sort of thing happens. And this one, as you said, started out as a Comedy Central roast and a Gilbert Gottfried joke, and it just kept spreading until someone finally applied it to Glenn Beck, and then apparently it was a FARC on the FARC website, right?
Yes, FARC.com.
Which is a very funny website. They did this. Now you know where this is leading, right?
Oh no, you're rickrolling me on the air?
You have been rickrolled. It had to be done. It was a moral imperative. So
now, Ed, explain that for the rest of the listeners who don't know what just happened.
This was one of the internet memes. This has, of course, become huge. This is like the second biggest internet meme of all time.
Yes.
Is this song, which I'm unfortunately I'm punishing myself as much as I am you by playing this, because the moment you hear this song, this is a musical virus that gets into your head, and it will now be in all of our heads for the rest of the evening. And yes, you can blame me.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to thank you for being with us. I discovered this case the other day, and I read your briefs in it, and like I said, you immediately became my favorite lawyer in the world for these, very funny but accurate, really compelling arguments as well.
We're a lawyer really is a storyteller, and you've got to be able to write to your audience, and you've got to be able to simply communicate. Legal writing does not have to be inhuman. It doesn't have to hurt to read it. And what I think too many lawyers forget is that a human being has to read their brief.
Right.
And when you make it this choppy, bullet-pointed, nobody would want to read it type material, I don't think you're doing the judge a favor. I don't think you're doing your client a favor. If it's well-researched, you're citing the proper cases, and you're getting your point across, why shouldn't it be something that people want to read as well?
I agree, and you did a great job of this, and I can't wait to see what the reply is to that motion for stipulation. Please email me when you get a reply to it.
Oh, do you have the cricket sound on your soundboard?
I don't. No, I'm afraid not. Mark, thank you very much for being with us.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Bye.